Hello, my name is Wasyl Cajkler. I'm a retired member of the University of Leicester, but I'm still a member of the Lesson Study Research Group. How do you do lesson study? That is the focus of this short presentation, and I'll take you through 3 steps: the planning of the lesson, of the research lesson, the observation of learning in the classroom, and the evaluation of learning after the research lesson has been conducted. First of all, let's consider the planning of the lesson. Now, first of all, as Julie said in the previous clip, we establish lesson study groups, usually of 3 or 4 people. And what they do, they get together and review the learning materials and the students' work and the progress that they've been making. And then they identify a learning challenge, something that has caused particular difficulty to the learners or is a particular challenge. Once they've done that, they then begin to plan a lesson and predict the learner responses. What will learners be doing at each stage of the lesson? And they develop a detailed lesson plan which includes the predictions. And they identify 2 or 3 case students that they're going to observe to see whether their predictions are actually realised in practice. There are certain important considerations that need to be taken into account when you set up a lesson study cycle, and particularly during the planning meetings, where the principle of positive mutual regard for every participant in the process needs to be observed. Basically, in the planning group, everyone has equal status. This is something that Pete Dudley stresses in his advice on how to do lesson study, because lesson study encourages risk-taking, so it encourages opportunities to develop pedagogy and try out new solutions. So it's important that everybody in the lesson study group agrees that there is joint ownership of the research lesson. It's not just the lesson of the person teaching it, it's the lesson of the whole planning group. So how to arrive at consensus is something also that needs to be agreed in advance. Some of the projects we've done, people have identified that as a potential difficulty. How do you resolve a situation where people don't quite agree on the content of the lesson? And you may be helped by a knowledgeable other, an expert in lesson study and an expert in the subject, who may well be present during the planning meetings. If so, that can be a great help, because this is somebody with experience who can advise about how to move forward when there are difficulties. One of the challenges for lesson study groups is the observation of learning, and this needs to be discussed in detail during the planning meeting, so that the observers and the teacher in the group predict what kind of learning they expect to see at every stage of the lesson. And it's a good thing to write those predictions down on the lesson plan. In addition, it's a very good idea to leave a column in the lesson plan so that you can write observation notes on the lesson plan about what kind of learning they think they can see during the lesson. Now, that in itself is particularly complex. It's very difficult to see what's happening in terms of learning. We can see the performance of the learners, what they're doing. We can't see what they're thinking necessarily. And unless we can hear what they say, we're not sure what they're verbalizing. So the issue of observation needs very careful attention during the planning meeting. There are ways that can facilitate the observation, which we'll come on to next. Here is an example of observation notes taken from the observation of a geography lesson that we did in one of our projects. And you can see in the final column some scribbled notes by the observer which relate to the different parts of the lesson. And this is an example of what we suggested earlier, that you can write notes on the lesson plan. Useful if you can blow up the lesson plan to a large size and include a column for the observer's observations of what's going on. And finally, we come to the last part of the lesson study cycle, which involves evaluating the learning. And what the observers and the teacher do is they discuss the effectiveness of the lesson, how well it went, and what the learners were doing at each stage. And the key question is, how did the learners respond and why? What were they doing at each part, and what did they appear to be learning? And as a result of that, you can arrive at methodological conclusions. You can think about the pedagogy and say, how would we improve this again at a future point if we were to teach it again or to teach a subsequent lesson? So you identify modifications for future use. During this meeting, if present, the knowledgeable other will also offer perspectives. This might be a supervisor in an initial teacher education setting. It could be an advisor of some sort, but an expert in pedagogy and in lesson study who is there to offer a critical perspective on what has happened.